Hello my creative friends, I'm Heather North from heatherscreativeblessings.com. It's almost Father's Day and my dad's birthday is this month. So I have some masculine cards I need to make, and I don't have a lot of masculine stamps, I realized. So I had to come up with a way to make cards that I could send to these guys in my life and that would work with what I had on hand. So this is what I've come up with. I'm going to be starting with doing some sponging. I have here some Whisper White cardstock. It's cut at 4 1/4 by 5 1/2 inches. I've also got some Distress inks. They're my favorite inks to blend with, but you could use most any dye ink, Stampin' Up! Or Memento. And then I've got a couple of these mini ink blending tools. I really like using them because they blend pretty easily, and you can just switch out the little sponge at the bottom and you switch out your colors. So I started with Squeezed Lemonade. I started with my lightest color, which I usually do. I wanted to make sure that I would have a highlight in the end. Also, it's easier to blend when you start with your lighter colors. Another tip I have when you are blending several different colors is to pick colors that are beside each other on the color wheel that will blend well together. So since yellow and blue make green, I'm using yellow, blue, and green in my sponging. And as you saw there, I had Twisted Citron as my first green, and then I went in with Cracked Pistachio, which is a little bit darker. And as I am blending, I go back and forth between my colors until I get a fairly smooth blend. Next, I'm coming in with Peacock Feathers. That's kind of it's a blue, but it's a greenish blue. From here, I'll move into my other blues. Now, what I tend to do is I pick up my ink color with my blending tool. I pounce off or even swirl off onto a scrap paper and then bring the ink onto my cardstock. First with a light touch and then moving to a darker or firmer touch as I blend out. And like I said before, I start with my lighter colors and move to my darker colors. This is to avoid some of those big blotches that you get. However, with this card, it won't really matter. We're going to die cut this piece out and you will not see the blotches or messes up is. You're just not going to see that in this, but it is good practice. So if you have trouble with sponging, try doing some of these techniques and try this on a piece of cardstock that you plan on die cutting out, because you really won't see the mistakes as much. You can also stencil over a piece like this, or stencil with some embossing paste and you won't see it. So just a couple of little tips there. And like I said, I go back and forth and blend, and I wish I would have started with the tumbled glass before I moved into that Peacock Feathers. That probably would have helped a little bit. But like I said, with what I'm going to end up doing, you're not going to even see that. Now that our piece is done, or, in other words, a hot mess, we're going to fix it. It's going to look good. I'm going to take this die from Penny Black. It's called Interlocking, and it covers almost the entire cardstock. What it does when you die cut it and center it is it leaves a little bit of a frame. Now, when I die cut it, I use a metal base plate. I find that helps with these intricate dies. And now I'm taking some Glad Press and Seal, and I'm just going to press that onto the back of my cardstock and peel the die off. This is one of the best ways to get the whole die off at once. And then I'm just going to very carefully peel my my die cut piece off of the press and seal, and it leaves behind most of those little pieces. Now I'm going to save these pieces, and at the end of this video I'll show you another card I made using the negative of this die cut. But look at how all those just came right out. Isn't that great? So now I'm going to use the positive die cut, and I'm just going to glue it down to a standard card base, 4 1/4 by 5 1/2 after it's scored and folded in half. And I'm going to use some matte medium to glue this piece down. I just go around the outside and then I dab a little dot, barely any glue, into the middle of some of these. I call them flowers. They're not really flowers, but there's just a little bit bigger space, and I just tapping in a little tiny bit of glue. The distress inks react with water or really any liquid, so I don't want the glue to seep out into the front, because when it does, it could create splotches or it could make that ink run and transfer the ink onto my card base, and I want my card base to stay nice and white, so I'm being extra careful. The Father's Day sentiment stamp I have is really small. It's from Teeny Tiny Wishes. And to make it have a little more oomph on my card, I decided to stamp it on to a tag. Now that white tag was getting lost on my card, so what I decided to do is to cut a second tag, and I'm sponging it with the same Salty Ocean Distress ink. It's one of the colors I used for that interlocking background. I'm just sponging up that tag, and that'll rest behind the white tag that I stamp on. There you go, just like that. Now I'm going to work on my white tag. I used some snail adhesive and just put a little bit onto my grid mat to hold that tag in place. And I'm going to use my Stamp-A-Majig. I haven't used this in so long. I prefer using the Misty, but the Teeny Tiny Wishes, which is one of, I think it's the only current stamps that I have that says Happy Father's Day. It's wood mount, and I got it before Stampin' Up! Started carrying their clear mount stamps. So what you do with the Stamp-A-Majig is you just put that plastic sheet into the corner of the Stamp-A-Majig handle, and then you stamp down, you line up your stamp into that corner, and you stamp down, and then you can see exactly where that stamp is going to stamp. You position it where you wanted it, that's what I did, and then I stamped down using black StazOn ink. As long as you don't move your Stamp-A-Majig, you can stamp down more than once, so if you don't get a good impression, you can stamp again. Now, with StazOn ink, you need to use a StazOn cleaner to clean it. I didn't have that on hand, so I just did a quick clean with what I have. I do have this stamp set from Clearly Besotted. I don't know what the name is. I think it might be Sweet Sentiments. I'll include a list down below of everything that I used. But this has husband, dad, uncle, brother, so you can say Happy Father's Day to all different kinds of men in your life, as well as they've got auntie and cousin and friend and other things. So I decided to stamp Dad in the very bottom corner of my tag. So Happy Father's Day was on an angle and Dad is straight. I just like the look of it, but you could do whatever you want. This is your card. Make it the way you want it. You probably noticed I use a clear block with my Stamp-A-Majig, so it works with a clear block or a wood block. I have a very big shortage of masculine stamps, I noticed, that are current when I was looking for these Father's Day cards. So if you have a good stamp set, let me know in the comments down below. But since I didn't have a good stamp set, I actually went to my Christmas card stamps. And I'm going to pull out the deers from that one stamp set right there. But here's another idea. You can use the negative space, those little interlocking diamonds, I guess you would call them. You could glue those onto your tag. You could sponge a separate piece and die cut stars or circles or all kinds of different things to put on your tag. Since I'm using this Christmas stamp, it has a starburst, and I thought that would be really cool. I'm just going to ink up the lighter colors of ink that I used, and I'm just going to stamp them randomly in threes around my tag. At this point, I decided not to add the little fawn to my card. I thought that if I stamped it on that tag, it would just be too much with all of the, I kind of got carried away with my starburst. So instead, I just used some snail adhesive to adhere my white tag to my blue tag, and then I used some black baker's twine from Pretty Pink Posh, thread it through the hole, and then added some dimensionals to pop it up, and I'll just trim that down. And there is card number 1. You are not limited to Father's Day or even to the orientation of this card. I flipped this one on its side. Sorry, my son's waving. Hello. Hi, Michael. I flipped this on its side and I added a journaling tag to the center. You could use any white cardstock you wanted, or any color cardstock really. I just stamped out Happy Birthday to You, and then I stamped out the confetti from the stamp set around the outside edges using the different colors that I had sponged earlier. And now I want to show you what I am, an idea of what to do with those leftover pieces from the interlocking die. Here I have just taken some black cardstock, I adhered it to my card front, and then I took out some of the pieces and glued them into that black positive space. Does that make sense? I didn't glue every single piece. I left some white pieces because I wanted that look, but you could do every single piece. And here I have some foam. This is from Sugar Pea Designs. I die cut the tag out of the foam and it kind of squished it out a little bit. So what I did was I just took my scissors and went around that foam and lightly, or just cut a sliver off, and then I mounted my tag to that foam to pop it up evenly for shipping. Now to get the little pieces out of the die that get stuck, first I tap it on my table, that gets a lot of them out, and then I just take this pokey tool and I poke out the rest. This die actually comes out pretty easily, but there are little pieces. Now I would only do this interlocking card with the negative and the positive together for somebody very special because it is time consuming, but it is a wow factor. And I think it reminds me a lot of there you go, that's a better look at it. And it reminds me a lot of quilting, so I can see sending this to some of my quilting friends. So there you go, 3 different ideas for using this interlocking die and sponging. I have another card earlier this week that I will link to for you, showing you yet another idea using this die. It's a very versatile die, and just think of the color changes you could make and the possibilities that you could create are endless. Thank you so much for joining me today. If you like this video or any of these cards, give me a thumbs up and consider subscribing to my YouTube channel to see more from me. I hope that you find some time today to get a little bit creative. Bye!